interview.
Okay.
All right. So, Eric Chessen of Autism Fitness.
Hello.
Welcome to our very first interviewee for ABLG TV. I'm so excited to have you here.
I am excited. Yeah, I didn't know I was the first one, yeah.
You are the inaugural.
All right.
You are.
It only gets better from here. I'll set the bar really low.
Perfect. So everyone else can feel really comfortable after this interview.
Yeah, that's all I want to do. I just want to buffer other people's self-esteem.
Beautiful. That's a great purpose in life, you know. So I really wanted to grab you because we started working together, I think you just said 12 years ago, right?
Yep.
Because you were at my wedding and that's been 10 years. So I know it was before that. And we started working together in a really unconventional way.
Yes.
So before we tell everybody about that, let me just tell them about you, because Eric is the founder of Autism Fitness. And according to his website, he's dedicated to not only providing fitness services to young individuals on the spectrum, but to educating other fitness trainers, PE and APE coaches, parents, therapists, and other professionals on how to optimize development through exercise. So do you want to say a little bit more about what you do?
No, I just want to leave it to, we'll just leave blank space there. 12 years ago when you and I first started, and we can get into how that evolved. I was a personal trainer at the time, working with general population, although I had some experience working with the autism and special needs population as well. And after you and I started working together, I realized that there was a very significant and very underserved need for fitness and active play among the autism population. So what I decided to do with my career was develop fitness programs for the autism population that actually worked. Now there were some important components to that, and caveats and asterisks that come into play. So what I wanted to do was find a way, or find a system, or develop a way to make fitness meaningful and reinforcing for the population. That's chapter one.
Uh-huh. So how long was chapter one in your business?
Probably about 5 or 6 years. I would even say 8 to get a system down too. The first 5 years, as you and I have spoken about in the past, and then recently a few minutes ago, was convincing people that fitness was important, was a life skill, was something that had some small semblance of benefit for the population. That was the first 5 years, was me going out and writing articles and speaking to people. And this is only my limited experience, but I had lukewarm responses most of the time to that. And then,
but I mean, Eric, you've always been a little ahead of the curve. So I remember when we worked together, you would say to me, well, JJ, if you want to be like free of toxins and you want to eat healthily, shop around the perimeter of the grocery store. And it was like, what? And now, like, everybody says that, and maybe they heard you, but you've always been like ahead of the curve like that. So like when we do programming for people with autism, and at ABLG, one thing that you inspired was we now program across 10 what we call essential domains. So of course we want to address the core deficits of autism, which include, speech and social skills and things like that. Right. But we also include things that are more progressive, like technology and fitness. So fitness is a category that we ask people, health and fitness, that we ask people to program in our homes, because we really felt like it was so important. But tell me a little bit about, like, of all of these priorities that people have, why should it be on the top, 3 list?
Good question. I don't know. I have no answer. No. Well, fitness it's really a life skill. And if we have that underlying basis of physical ability and initiative, it helps throughout everything. I mean, you can pull plenty of studies that demonstrate, obviously, physical health is improved through appropriate fitness programming. And then you have the adaptive or the emotional component also, but that's relative to the individual. So sometimes I'll see programs advertised that they develop, and this is for the neurotypical population as well, self-esteem and socialization and independence. And yes, those are all things that can happen, but you can't make a blanket statement that they necessarily will, or will within a year or 2 years. Sometimes it takes 3 years or 4 years. Some my athletes, some of whom I've been with for years and years and years, it takes 3 years before they really have that emotional buy-in, or something becomes reinforcing for them enough that they'll do it independently. And that's why I stress consistency as such an important foundation of any type of programming, particularly fitness, because it's not always reinforcing for the individual in the beginning.
Yeah.
But getting back to the question, the reason why it's important, you have physical health in the short term, then you have physical health long term. In fact, I'm writing an article this morning where I'm mentioning the incidence of low back pain in this country, because people sit a lot, but it's not about low backs, it's about hips not being strong enough. So if we incorporate that into our programming, then we don't have to worry about a nonverbal 22-year-old on the autism spectrum suffering from low back pain, because we've already mitigated that factor through their fitness programming. So it's both proactive and it's also preventative as well. So you have those two components working. From the adaptive or the emotional perspective also, I do see a marked improvement in my athletes' attitude towards fitness and physical activity. They will seek out activities to do. They will seek out certain things that that we have going on in our fitness program. So they'll want to throw the medicine ball around. They'll want to swing the fitness ropes, and it gives them new opportunities, not only to develop skill, but to interact as well. So the socialization component comes in when the socialization component is appropriate and when it's ready to flourish. And then from the cognitive perspective, I've done a lot of cool stuff where we can build in language targets, or we can build in prepositions, or all kinds of what you might call more abstract concepts that we can add to, again, when it's appropriate, fitness programming. And then over the long term, as a life skill, it should be apparent that this is something that that all people, regardless of their diagnosis or lack thereof, should have access to, and it's something that can enhance our lives at any stage. So my youngest athlete right now is 5. My oldest athlete right now is 50.
Amazing.
They are both getting benefits from exercise activities.
Yeah. And I love what you say about there's short-term health, there's long-term health, there's fitness itself becoming reinforcing, right, in itself.
Yeah.
And then you had said before we started the call something, really I thought that was just like duh, and also very important, which is that just having a diagnosis of autism doesn't mean you're not going to get diabetes.
Right.
So can you say more about that?
Sure. Well, one diagnosis doesn't preclude another. So, and I think one of the reasons that this changeover happened between whatever it was, years 6 and 8 in my development of and building of Autism Fitness, was, I think, the Let's Move campaign with Michelle Obama, and more of a general consensus that fitness was important for young people in this country and throughout the Western world. But a lot of that came because all of a sudden we have this quote-unquote obesity crisis, which is, it's not an obesity crisis so much as it is a sedentary or a lack of activity crisis. The obesity or kids gaining weight is just the most visual component. It's the most overt component of what's happening. But when you have general populations that don't exercise regularly or have access to fitness and active play programs, and there's a big difference between general fitness and active play programs and sports. I go into long discussions about that at my seminars, in my articles, because there's a huge differentiation, particularly when you're talking about special needs populations. So I think that in reaction to the idea that all of a sudden, we've taken fitness and exercise away, and now bad things happen, people are looking at it as something that makes sense now as far as providing special needs populations with fitness. Then the questions are how and what are the best modalities. So my journey up until that point was convincing people, okay, in general, fitness is important. In general, movement is important. Now the thing is how.
Yeah.
Now the thing is what makes sense as far as programming. What are the optimal programming strategies? What exercises, what activities make sense? Which is cool. You're kind of chipping away and developing the statue. So we've chipped away at part one. Part one was, this is important. This is a thing that is meaningful.
Yeah.
I think most people get that. I'd be happy to debate somebody who said, well, fitness isn't important and we don't think that it has any inherent value for the population. But I don't think I'm going to find that person anymore. The person that I'm going to find now is going to say, well, let's use baseball or let's use soccer. And I'm going to say, well, here are the issues with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and at the same time, and from the work that we did with the client that we shared, I also saw how fitness really did open those doors for other possibilities of participating in groups. So it was kind of, it was like a skill that you helped him develop that he was then able to bring out to different groups and didn't have to do in isolation. So I thought that was also a really cool byproduct that just happened to be something he got good at that we could use in that way as well. So first you had to convince everyone fitness was important, and I think you're right. I think the whole country had to be convinced that fitness was a priority, right? So now we all know that, and if we're not participating in some kind of movement, we feel guilty. So we all know.
Right, that's what I want.
Important. And
it was a motivator.
Yeah, exactly. So, and now we're like trying to avoid feeling guilty and getting fat, so that's okay. And then, so in the past, you kind of just touched on this. In the past, you had talked to me a little bit about like adaptive phys ed.
Yeah.
And how it's incorporated in schools and kind of what's not working about that model. Can you talk a little bit about that and what changes that you're making in the like adaptive phys ed model?
I could talk a lot about that.
Okay, we have half an hour, so.
Well, there's a whole segment that I go into called fitness versus sports. And it's not that sports are bad. I'm not vilifying or demonizing them, but you have to take things into consideration as far as what makes sense for a given population. And a lot of this is culturally based because we have such an obsession with team sports in the US. So everything from the top begets everything that follows. So what I mean by that is if sports are the paradigm of physical movement in a culture, then we're going to see that happening in the mainstream as far as kids, because obviously, if you dress a little kid up like a soccer player, he is now a soccer player. The problem with that, and the way that I tend to describe it, is sports are not the top of the pyramid. They are a branch on a tree. And the roots of the trunk of that tree of movement and physical endeavor is basic movement, skill, and strength and stability, all of these things that you need to perform these sports or these other activities progressively, safely, and effectively. So if you have a kid who's really into a team sport or really into a specialized sport, great, let them do it. Because as we spoke about before, with long-term development, they're probably only going to be doing it into their mid-teen years anyway, because the opportunities vastly diminish. So there are a couple of very important considerations here. Number one, do we draw more physical benefit from a sports activity, or do we draw more from something that is more open-ended? So in the programs that I develop, in the programs that I have for my athletes, we can always progress or regress the activities based if we're doing a medicine ball throw or doing a squat or doing an overhead walk or doing cone touches or jumps. We can always regress that to the point where the individual can succeed and progress from there. Sports do not allow for that without watering them down a whole lot. And honestly, as far as time in the actual activity, take a stopwatch to your average neurotypical soccer or basketball or baseball game and see how long that child is actually participating or actually moving. The problem is, in general, with fitness versus sports, a sports-based program, which is what most PE programs are based on right now, and that happened over the last several decades. That was from the 70s to the 80s, things in general physical education became a lot more about let's teach units, and it's, well, what can we teach in units, rather than a model that took obstacle courses and creativity and let's invent our own games. It was, let's do a baseball unit and a basketball unit and a soccer unit
and a badminton unit. I had a badminton unit.
I do like badminton though, but as a
I can't say I got really buff from the badminton unit.
Performance enhancing substances for badminton. I'm sure it happens. What you're doing, because the majority of, if you took a poll, the majority of neurotypical kids probably don't want to play soccer or basketball. There are going to be a few in that class of 25 or 30 that will play, and everybody else is just trying to look busy.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is you're developing general programs that are catering to the minority, and that's in the general setting. So what I've seen happen, and again, this is only my experience and the feedback that I get, is most adaptive PE programs attempt to emulate what's going on in the general PE program, but it's a completely flawed model. Now, one of the nice things that I've gotten as far as feedback from parents is my whole, your kids don't have to play sports in order to be active, is reassuring for them, because a lot of you spoke about feeling guilty. A lot of parents feel guilty that their kids are not participating in sports.
Yeah.
The problem is here are not the individuals or the diagnosis skill set. The problem is the system as a whole. We need to take a very serious look, and by saying take a very serious look, it's my formal and professional way of saying eradicate entirely
world domination.
Yeah, exactly, and destroy with impunity the sports-based model of fitness and health, because it doesn't work. And the more sports leagues you have, it is the situation with juvenile diabetes and obesity, if we want to label it that, but really the sedentary lifestyle issue really being resolved with more sports programs. There are more than ever before. So the answer is undoubtedly no. So you need a different system. So what do you base your system on? Well, general movement and active play and creativity, because you get very little creativity in team sports. There's not a whole lot of leeway there. But if you say, well, we're doing it based on movement, and by movement I say pushing and pulling and hopping and run, if we're taking all of these movement skills and saying, let's develop a program out of this so we can make it individualized, even in group settings, all of a sudden everybody can participate. Isn't that novel?
Yeah. So it's not only is it's more accessible, it's more inclusive, and there's a chance that, like you said, the sports model is really catering to that minority of kids who are really into sports, but this gives everybody a chance to find something that they really love and that is inherently reinforcing for them.
Exactly, and it also allows for those skills to develop. You never go from specific to general, you go general to specific. So even if a kid is going to play a sport, well, let's develop the motor planning, let's develop the coordination, let's develop the strength and stability. And as I mentioned before, from a long-term perspective, it's fine. You don't do everything considering the 10 or 15-year plan, but realistically, if all a kid does is play soccer and then one day they don't have the skill set to play on a soccer team, or they burn out, which was definitely my experience with baseball. I burned out one day. I said, I don't want to do this anymore. So what then? So you say, all right, I played in a travel league 10 years ago, so I'm good on movement now.
Right. So like having something that you can carry over no matter what that other branch on the tree looks like, but you always have something you can carry over. And
also from the perspective of actually generalizing the skill set to real life, because that's the whole point of fitness. The whole point of fitness is not what can you do in the fitness session, but what can you do in the fitness session that's going to generalize to your abilities outside of that. Sports skills are very specific. They're very finite. They don't generalize to real life activities. You're not going to get stronger in a general sense playing badminton. You might if you've never done anything else, but I was actually having a conversation with one of my friends yesterday, and they were talking about people doing Zumba or yoga or for general health. And it's fine. It's okay. I'm never going to dissuade somebody from enjoying something, but the practical component of that is you can like it as much as possible. It still may not be giving you what you need. So there needs to be a healthy balance between what you need to do and what you like to do. And the whole issue of also, secondary reinforcement and consistency is eventually some of the things that you need to do may become the things that you like to do also. But, doing one particular sport or one particular physical activity, especially for younger people, just because they do it and do it consistently, it doesn't mean that it's going to give them the necessary foundational movement patterns. You can eat broccoli all day, and that's great, but it's not going to give you any protein.
Right. So there's something
more
well-rounded.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And from a developmental standpoint, and from the vantage point of autism in general, it's been very, very few. I can think of maybe one or two in hundreds of athletes that I've worked with who have age-appropriate strength and stability levels. Yeah. So we're usually starting out at a deficit, which, okay, fine, that's where we're starting out, but we need to develop that first. That is the first intervention, is we need to get that strength, the strength endurance, the ability to do to perform a task longer for an appropriate amount of time, and then everything will come. Yeah. Because at this point, I've calculated generally how long it takes for things to progress. Nice. So I can say, all right, usually the buy-in period for something to be reinforcing for one of my athletes, if they don't take to it immediately, is about, I'd say about 3 months. And then all of a sudden they're doing stuff on their own. So during a break period, independently, they'll go grab a medicine ball, they start doing stuff. One of my athletes just started walking back and forth with the hurdle steps for the first time, and we've been working together for 2 months. So I have a certain gauge that I've developed now, but this is the stuff this is kind of the have-to stuff when we're talking about programming. Is we need the strength component, we need the stability component, we need the chaining component also, which is motor planning, going from activity A to B to C. So you don't start with the most finite. It's like, also in the occupational therapy world or the PT world, we talk about proximal to distal. It doesn't make sense to work on distal, so the extremities outside, until we have some stability. If you stabilize the shoulder, you have a lot more opportunity to get handwriting down or typing down because you're working on the larger muscle group first. Yeah,
that's something you've always said from the beginning. And something else that from day one that always impressed me was that it was like doing a push-up or a bear walk, it wasn't enough. They had to be done right, and they had to be done with core strength. And you talked about that a lot from the beginning, because what's the point of any of this if it's going to cause injury? And that you were seeing just a lot of people promoting fitness, but not fitness with good form. And so, which brings me to kind of how we met, actually, because we met in the Learning Processes program at Queens College in like Behavior Analysis 101 or whatever. And
rat model.
And
Sniffy the rat.
We had Sniffy the virtual rat in our computers. And so we both kind of had this shared interest in behavior analysis, obviously. And then I was working with a learner that needed some fitness, and we got talking, and then it made sense for you to come and
over the course of a bus ride, you convinced me.
Might have been 2 bus rides, but those bus rides in Queens are really long, so people shouldn't be fooled. We were on that bus for like 2 hours anyway, and so you came, and then you started doing this really unique pair of fitness, but also applied behavior analysis, and putting the two together. I haven't seen anybody else do that yet. And it's so valuable. And so when I am talking about, like, I remember working with this learner and being not only astounded that he was developing all of these fitness abilities and fitness skills and running these obstacle courses that you set up for him and having fun, but he was doing them with great form. Like that boy could do a push-up, like beautifully, and completely, nobody's sinking, no abs, or I don't know about from push-ups, but and so I'm curious to know, like, how do you feel like ABA really helped develop that form and fitness piece of your practice?
Well, it systematizes everything, and one of the greatest compliments that I get about the programming is I'll have some fitness professionals come in for the trainings or see stuff, and they'll say, and these are some of my friends and colleagues, and they'll say, wait a minute, that's just really good coaching. I say, yeah, exactly, that's what good coaching is. It's systematized. It makes sense in the context of the situation. Yeah. the ABA side of things gave structure, and particularly with this population, if I were working just with neurotypical kids, I know that the stuff I would be doing is reinforcing, because I can see it when I work with my athlete in the park. On Saturday mornings, I have cones set up. I have sand bells, which are these great little weights made out of neoprene, and they have sand in them, so you drop it on your foot and your toe doesn't break. Makes a lot of sense. And medicine balls. And children naturally gravitate towards everything that we're doing. And then, of course, their parents want to pull them back because they want to be polite. And I say, no, they can explore. Come on in. And it's a great opportunity for my athlete also to socialize a little, and also be a little more resilient about sharing.
Yeah. So all that stuff, all those toys are like toys to the neurotypical.
Yeah,
they are like, woo!
Exactly. It's fitness stuff. It's colorful, and they look at it as playtime.
Yeah.
I don't have that luxury the majority of the time with my athletes on the spectrum, with it being immediately reinforcing. So in my program, and the way that I structure my methodology, you have your physical component, that's the activity. You have your adaptive component, that's the motivation. How motivated is this athlete to perform that activity at any given time? Is it inherently reinforcing? Do we have to build in break time and alleviation from the task-based activity, or do we have to also develop a system with a secondary reinforcer, a token system, something else that we can build in? And then the cognitive component of learning styles. If I didn't have the ABA side of things, or that training, then there's only the physical. And you can have the greatest program on paper, but it's not going to do anything if you don't have the vehicle to build it and to actually run it. And the most important question I think anybody can ever ask about any program, what it purports to do, what the claims are, is what do you say you do, what actually happens? And this is my experience with a lot of the sports-based programs. They'll list stuff and they'll say build self-esteem, build self-confidence, build physical function. Great, those are a bunch of words. What merit do those words have with regard? I only do two things, or I tell people I do two things. I get my athletes moving better and stronger, and eventually, and I don't put a specific timeline on this, but eventually we'll find some aspect of movement that they find reinforcing. Because those are the two things that I know I can deliver on. Now, it doesn't look great on a brochure when you have 2 points, but those are things that I know I can follow through with consistently, and that leads to all the other good stuff too. That may lead to self-esteem and socialization, whatever that means for that particular individual. But you need to satisfy those core tenets first. So the ABA side of things is really, it's absolutely necessary in systematizing everything, particularly from the adaptive perspective. And the adaptive perspective is the most important of the 3 initially, because physical functioning can be great. Most of the time we're looking at a lot of deficits. Cognitive functioning, I'm just figuring out learning styles. I want to know if it's more of a kinesthetic learner where I have to guide them through the activity physically, or more of a visual learner, I can model it for them. But the adaptive component, JJ, if I have an athlete who is who's motivated or at least compliant enough to complete to complete 10 repetitions of a squat. Well, that's 10 opportunities not only for them to succeed, but to practice the movement so they get better at it physically. If I have an athlete who has really low adaptive functioning right now, throughout that 45-minute or hour session, we may get 2 repetitions in. The higher the adaptive functioning, the more motivation, the more reinforcing it is for them, the more opportunity we're going to get to engage in the activity. So the higher the adaptive skill, that buys us as coaches and practitioners more opportunity for success and more time with the task. And usually, and this is the case with everybody because we're talking about human beings, the better we get at something, the more we like to do it, or the less we
hate to do it.
The less we hate to do it.
Yeah, we like to do what we're good at, right? We don't like to do what's painful.
I give an example of myself. I had to go skiing about a dozen times before I decided I didn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
I had to get good enough at it to know that I didn't like it because I didn't like it, not because I was bad at it.
Yeah,
so
that's a great point.
You have to give yourself those opportunities in life too. You look at trying a new food. So someone goes out to sushi for the first time. If you go in a place you've never been to before, you're with a bunch of strangers and you're not sure what to order, or it's going to be a less reinforcing environment than if you go out with a bunch of friends, you have a few drinks, if that's your thing, and everybody is engaged in great conversation and people have done this before, because it's a more inviting, reinforcing environment. Mm-hmm. The same is true of fitness. The more reinforcing, the more individualized the environment, the more chance you're going to have with success. So a lot of what you taught me as a mentor also is creating an environment that is conducive to success for the individual, and creating, I when I present about this, I say you want to absolutely limit the athlete's opportunity to fail.
Yeah.
As much as possible. You want to make it impossible for them to fail.
Yeah.
In that moment, especially initially, in the first couple sessions or the first few times you introduce something that they're not necessarily going to want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where that errorless learning piece can come in and be so useful, and using, hand over hand guidance if needed, and making sure that kind of individualized reinforcement is there. And I also loved what you said about ABA really allowed for efficiency of sessions. So, and I've seen that across many disciplines, like in speak sessions and fitness sessions, and that when you bring in that ABA component, we can just get more done in the same period of time than if we're just, kind of putting the content out there and hoping that the learner is going to take to it. So, that's one of the great benefits of ABA and as a learning modality is the efficiency of teaching. And that's something I really do love about it. I'm glad you brought that up. So tell me one of your favorite outcomes with a client.
I have a couple. You talk about push-ups. So one of my athletes, he was working on push-ups with one of his other, I think, PTs, and one of his issues is trunk stability, as it is with many of my athletes. So we started working on push-ups a little bit, and again, it was a very rote, quite not there, wheels falling off type of skill. So we regressed it to the point where he can do it, and it was something that I got feedback that it was something he really didn't like to do in the PT environment. And then I said, well, let me get down on the floor and I'll do a push-up and then you'll do one, kind of this back to forth. And what he discovered was that he liked to sit on my back while I did push-ups. It was reinforcing for him. So I said, yeah, sure, I'm getting some of my training in also, because if ever I have the opportunity to do a couple more weighted push-ups, especially with an 80-pound kid.
This is what's so great about you. You just go with it. Go with anything and make it work.
Well, the mantra has become, we're doing this now.
That's great. We're doing this now. Can we please get T-shirts made?
My friend Dave Jack, who is a luminous and gift to the fitness industry, I told him that we were hanging out up in outside Boston, and we're in a pool just hanging out on a Saturday, and I told him the "we're doing this now" story because I had shot a video. I'm sorry, this curtails into another story with one of my athletes, Fidele, who I've been working with for 8 years. And so I'm shooting a video with him. We're doing medicine ball throws, and then we're done, and he just bolts and runs off. And I have this on video. And it wasn't a dangerous situation, but he's just done, and he's walking off. So I turned to the camera, and I said, we're doing this now. Dave decided that this was the funniest thing he had ever seen. So occasionally when we speak to each other on the phone or see each other, he'll just turn to me and said, hey, we're doing this now.
We're doing this now. So I love it.
It's that neuroplasticity that everybody talks about, and just being able to shifting the environment to the needs of that individual. Because there are situations where you are going from medicine ball throws to preventing an individual from running straight out of the room into traffic. So you have to be committed to, or you have to be flexible enough to think, all right, what's my hierarchy of needs right now? But I think in most of the cases of success with my athletes, it's not even, I'll get feedback that, oh, they jumped in class, or, their teachers all say they're sitting up straighter, or they're able to participate. It's not any of that for me. Well, it is that, but the biggest thing for me is seeing them independently walk over and pick something up and turn to me and want to do it.
Yeah.
Because that tells me that there's some component of reinforcement there, that it's something that has now become enough of their lexicon that they want to do it.
And you're really, to be completely layperson and non-behavior analytic, you're getting to share your love of what you do with other people by teaching them to love it. It's
what
a dream job.
You want as a practitioner than to share everything that everything that you've worked for professionally with the person who you're most focused on.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so now you work with trainers, parents.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you work with people, or how they could find you if they want to learn more about this.
Yeah. So in addition to my athletes here on Long Island and in New York City, and over at the Family Center for Autism in Garden City, what I realized was, since this was something that was not very prevalent, autism for the training population, training for the autism population, or fitness for the autism population. Once I developed that methodology, I really wanted to get it out there to people who could benefit from it. And I have occupational therapists and physical therapists and parents, and now it's been exciting for me because I get fitness professionals and trainers who have parents who want them to work with their kids, or they have schools that contact them about coming in, and I get adaptive PE professionals who want a different strategy or a completely different way of engaging this population. So I started the Autism Fitness seminar series, and also wrote a couple of ebooks that are on the website. I have the YouTube channel, which has plenty of videos of my athletes.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Everyone should check that out. How do they find that YouTube channel?
It is the Autism Fitness on YouTube, and I have two types of videos I do. I have a series called Autism Fitness Concepts, where I actually take some of the concepts in ABA and break them down into how do we apply this to a fitness session.
Yeah.
And then I have videos of specific exercises that we use, or videos of my athletes also, going through a lot of their regular training programs to show what it actually looks like, because I want absolute transparency. Mm-hmm. These are the things that I'm talking about. This is what they actually look like. This is what it looks like when things aren't going so well, because that's the case a lot of the time. And this is how we progress from where we are right now. And one of the biggest items that I like to cover is the fact that I do not, nor have I ever cherry-picked my clientele. So it's not as though my programs are only for high-functioning individual. I have long sleeves on, but I can definitely show you the bite marks that I've sustained in some more colorful sessions. Yeah. But what I'm so thankful about, early in my career, that a few of the individuals that I worked with did have some pretty significant maladaptive behaviors, whether it was self-injury or aggression.
Yeah, I'm having flashbacks.
Yeah. The methodology and the programming that I had to develop had to work for everybody. Yeah. So it wasn't as though I was trying to take things or take concepts or take exercises and activities that worked with a very high-functioning, very motivated group of individuals, and then say, okay, how can we take it? It was actually the reverse, if anything. So I had to know that this stuff worked.
Yeah, it's so important, because fitness is for everybody, right? And if that's the message, and that's true, and we really believe that the benefits are for everybody on any level of ability, the fact that you're able to bring this to any kind of session, and you're not pre-selecting your learners by they have to have, certain maladaptive behavioral prerequisites, or they don't have to have this or that. Like, you really, and I have really witnessed this. I mean, you work around everything, and you really have that ability to say, we're doing this now. Like, okay, we're gonna drop this like fitness objective for the second, because we've got to treat this behavior that's going on, and then we're gonna come back to it. And I've like kind of watched you go through that, like you said, that hierarchy of, okay, what's the priority here, and have the ability to manage all that and get something done. It's really, it's a remarkable thing.
Well, thank you. I think the biggest thing for me also was fitness for everybody except you.com was too long a domain name. And I didn't think that it would fit into a marketing program really well. So that's the only reason that I...
It's a pretty good one. You might have a branch there.
Autism Fitness for everybody except you.
Except you.
Yeah.
I love it. So let me ask you, we're coming to our time, but I want to ask you, we are going to do our own version of same 5 questions we ask everybody. So I thank you for helping me to co-create these 5 questions. So first of all, if you were on a desert island and you could have 3 albums, what would they be?
Okay, album number 1 would be Buck Cherry, self-titled.
Nice.
The second one would be probably Ambulance LTD, also self-titled. And the third, do I go Pantera or do I go Fiona Apple?
It's different.
I go eclectic. I would actually have to go Ice Cube, Death Certificate.
Nice. Now, are those some of your favorite albums to like do your own workouts to?
My stuff. I was explaining this to somebody the other day, and I realized 2 things. And this I think was the really cool thing about turning 30 and then growing into whatever maturity I've grown into. I sounded nuts, but I didn't really care. So I have this carefully compiled list of training-only songs on my iTunes that will never be listened to unless I'm training.
Nice pairing.
Because again, exactly, it's paired, and I realized this the other day. I said, "Oh, I'm pairing because there's a specific stimulus response that I want in a specific context." So yeah, there's all of my hard rock stuff, all of my my rap stuff, certain rap stuff is in there. So that gets broken out at no other time than my training.
All right. And did any of those make it into Desert Island with you?
So yeah, some of the Ice Cube stuff, because I'm thinking, because let's go through.
Are we getting a sample right now?
There's some Henry Rollins in here. There's Ice Cube. There's more Marilyn Manson than I thought. There's Monster Magnet. Ooh, Monster Magnet is out of Jersey too.
That's true. Now, do you come to Jersey? You do some workshops in Jersey, right?
I'm planning on doing a New Jersey workshop probably October.
Yeah, I'd love people to get to your workshops, because if you look at Eric's website and you see some of the workshops, they're not your standard sit down and learn workshops. There's obstacle courses. There's parents and trainers standing up, jumping over hurdles, experiencing it, kinesthetically from the learner's perspective. It's great stuff. So if you ever have a chance to go to one of Eric's, then definitely do it. So question number 2, what is the resource that you recommend to everyone? So I was saying that, you're a resource that I recommend to a lot of my families when it comes to fitness. So what's something that you recommend to people?
I do like the National Autism Association, which is one of the slightly lesser known. It's not as big as the big 2, but they're a really good resource. And here in New York, they're really active.
They're awesome. And they have the big red safety toolbox that I recommend to everybody. I just love that so much. Yeah, so they're fantastic.
I like them.
Nice.
And actually, if anybody's interested, I'll be doing a free event with them June 20th in Central Park. Great. It's our Autism Fitness Family Day, which is complete fun, absolute chaos.
Yeah, and you can read about the last one on his blog.
Yep.
What is your favorite thing about what you do? And we might have touched on this, but...
Yeah. Spontaneity. Because even though everything is structured, and I talk about this in the seminars, you're going from structure, so a structured learning situation, to chaos, but chaos is play. And when I can see that blossom, it's like that time-lapse photo or time-lapse video of watching, this is going to sound really esoteric, but watching a flower bloom. And like when you see that in real time, so when I see for the first time, I put up a video on my Facebook page the other day of 2 of my teen athletes who for the first time were throwing a medicine ball back and forth without my being the third there. They were just throwing it. That took 4 months, no, 5 months for that to happen. But it happened, and I catch it on video.
Awesome.
And that, to me, that's where, that's where I start to, in a good way, melt down, because I see all of the planning and the effort that goes into it. I see the outcome of that. There's nothing better than that.
Well, we say that a lot in our field, right? Our job is to lose our jobs. Like, our job is to plan things such that the things that we teach do become preferred, spontaneous, and are able to be done in less restrictive ways than an ABA environment. So it's for me, it's always reinforcing when I'm no longer needed.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that.
We work ourselves out of the job.
Yeah, exactly. That's the goal, right? What's the best book that had nothing to do with your vocation in the last year that you've read, or listened to, or watched?
Yeah, I just finished Burnt Tongues, which is a collection of Chuck Palahniuk.
I should have guessed.
Who wrote Fight Club? Yeah, he had an online workshop of writers who, some of whom never had anything published, and they took a collection of essays. They narrowed it down from original 70 down to 20 stories. So these are the 20 best.
Cool.
That they took, and I have a thing for short stories too. So I just finished that, and it had some really good stuff. It had the stuff that you think about 2 weeks later, and you say, "Oh, that it's still
sunk in.
It's still curating."
Cool. And finally, Eric, what's the number one wisdom nugget that you would want people to take away from our talk today?
That fitness is not only important for this population, but it should be accessible also, which is why I'm trying to, our dialogue over the last decade has been about interdisciplinary models. And that's why the more accessibility you have, it's not just about having one environment. So it's not just about having fitness centers. It's about having schools. It's about having classroom. I just recently put out an ebook called Autism Fitness in My Classroom, because I realized that a lot of classroom teachers were running the adaptive PE program because they didn't have another adaptive PE staff doing things. So I said, all right, here's, for $20, here's a complete program.
What a great resource
that you can run. So I think the accessibility in homes, in classrooms, in recreational centers, in behavior therapy environments also. And just using it as a tool and a gateway towards other life skills. Because it is. And of course I'm biased in saying that, but if you look at some of the video, you can see it happening.
Absolutely. And anecdotally, I've seen it. I've seen your work, and I've seen what happens as a result of it, as all the different byproducts that happen outside of the session because of the way that you train and the way you break things down. And I'm having fun memories of trying to task analyze some of these movements, because we were really just winging this thing. We were like, yeah sure. How do you task analyze? Ask an expert. Eric, can you get down and do a push-up and I'll take notes?
now with video, it makes it so much more conducive to success also, because being able to progress or regress something. And I've done a lot more with video now, where I can say, I'll stop a video and put text over it and say, okay, here's what's happening. The back is coming forward. We're having, some shoulder issues. I want you to see what I'm talking about, because if I just describing movement is a sucky way to get anything really good accomplished. But when you're watching, okay, this is what a bear walk looks like. This is what the hops look like. This is where landing mechanics come in. Bending the knees when you're landing from a jump. Oh, now I see it. Okay.
And a lot of the research on video modeling really points to that very thing. It increases, consistency amongst people who are teaching the same skill. It's, such a great teaching tool. It's easy to fade. And so it's great that you're able to use it in the fitness model. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you? What's your website?
My website is autismfitness.com.
Okay. And you're on YouTube, you said?
I am on YouTube,
Facebook?
The Autism Fitness. I am on Facebook as either Eric Chessen, or people can also Autism Fitness Workouts, which is the Facebook page. Cool. And I'll throw out a tweet every week or so because I remember to. But I think the best place for people to get a sense of what I do is on autismfitness.com or on the YouTube page.
Yeah, your site is great and it's really informative. And I believe there's a free ebook download on your site.
Yes, there is.
Tell
the
us
top
about
8
that.
exercises for Autism Fitness if you sign up for my newsletter. And the newsletter I try to keep really informative, latest in science or research, videos that I've put up, some thoughts on programming, and early bird access to the seminars. I have one coming up August 1st in Hanover, Pennsylvania.
Awesome.
Because I like pretzels, so I decided to go to Hanover.
Perfect.
We'll be doing the full day seminar there, so you get all the information about that stuff, access to some videos that other people don't have access to.
Yeah, and really fresh perspective. I read your newsletter, and it's always like a really fresh perspective on things that just kind of cuts to the heart of stuff. You're a great writer, so it's definitely a valuable newsletter to get, and the ebook is awesome. It's a really great introduction to fitness for the autism population.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Well, you were and still are one of my original mentors in all this. So a lot of what I've done, I do give thanks and credence to you.
Well, you invented this amazing field. I think it's awesome, and I would say at this point, let's just call it collaborators.
Okay.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you.
I'll see you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.